Paul Elam stated that the only anti-feminism that matters is anti-gynocentrism. This sentiment has been echoed and reiterated by the best voices in the men's human rights sphere, including Peter Wright, Robert Brockway, and others. And while I don't consider myself a best voice in this sphere, goodness knows that I regard this sentiment with the utmost seriousness. If you have followed my views on things, then I think you know this to be true. This is important to mention because I want to once again address the primarily anti-feminist crowd, some who still cling to gynocentric ways more than others, and still show resistance to using the word gynocentrism more openly. The gynocentric anti-feminist crowd is still abundant, and the majority of that whole sphere it seems, but the truth of the matter is that if anti-gynocentrism is not the forefront of the defensive aspect of men's human rights advocacy, then it has to be as soon as possible. Without being too long-winded about it, let me clarify a point. I use the term defensive aspect of men's human rights advocacy on purpose. In advocacy of any given thing, I do my best not to place the anti above the pro. The pro here is to make the case for the liberated man. By this I mean the man that lives free and choosing his own destiny and matter of contribution to the society he lives in on his own terms, and not beholden to those that try to subjugate it. Then there's the defensive aspect, which identifies the issues and threats, and mark them to be dealt with, gynocentrism, feminism, and the demands of male disposal that follow from them. But this is still to serve the pro, as previously mentioned. I have said in one capacity or another that for us at least, anti-feminism is easy. Tackling feminism is a matter of asking the question, where do you start? One can go all day picking apart the nonsense of the average feminist, and if it weren't for the fact that feminists are actively politically deciding the fates of men, these would end at being trifles. But it should be clear at this point that feminism doesn't just come in one fell swoop and take over everything. It can only be let in, allowed in, by those that have conceded. The sanction of the victim at work. The gynocentrist allows feminism to be not just smuggled in, but at this point, welcomed with open arms. Kill the gynocentrism, and we stop feminism dead in its tracks. This should be recognized as the logical course. We are not taking it. Why it isn't is enough of a subject matter to be filled in dozens of other conversations, but for now, I am saying that it should be well openly recognized as a problem to deal with. In thinking on the subject, it would follow that it would be necessary to offer a distinction between gynocentrism and feminism. Let's assume that we already know the order of operations. Feminism flows from gynocentrism, never the other way around. The distinction between feminism and gynocentrism appears to center on how it regards the male of the species. With the notion of patriarchy at the central core of all forms of feminism, it can be reasonable to distinguish feminism as the ideology that marks males as the hostile entity, and advocate anywhere from their subjugation to their assault and death as endpoints. Gynocentrism, on the other hand, alleges a benevolent attitude towards males in a highly conditional way. Be prepared to offer your life, your very humanity, and you will be treated as human. Male disposal is a side effect masquerading as male spiritual exaltation, whereas in feminism, males are directly the enemy to be neutralized. It seems to be tempting for many to fall under a gynocentric mode of anti-feminism because this is a way of gaining female support for fighting the myriad ills of feminism. Then there are pratfalls like allowing women with a female-first mentality to take on the reins of fighting feminism. A common tagline being, "This hurts women too." The translation is more like, "This hurts women and is the first reason we should fight this." The ones who allow this to come to pass are forgetting, if they ever really knew, that it was the gynocentrism that allowed feminism in the first place. I suppose I should talk about a term that has served as a pet peeve of mine for some time: covert feminism. Have I softened on this, or am I steadfast in not relying on this expression? I will give it one thing. When a tradcon or any gynocentrist starts regarding males with hostility and danger, like when they view biological males as dangerous to women and girls despite never echoing the sentiment when females intrude into male spaces, then perhaps it is quite alright to use the term covert feminist. It is when it becomes more of a catch-all expression to expose the tradcon that care is needed, however. A tradcon is not a covert feminist just because she merely intends to uplift female lives as intrinsically more valuable. The danger in the use of this term is that it serves as dismissal of the fact that she is a gynocentrist, and of the fact that gynocentrism should not be excused because the subject alleges anti-feminism. But we shouldn't hide it with phrases like covert feminism. Whereas feminism regards men with accusation and systemic suspicion, the broader gynocentric mindset is that of sentimental utilitarianism, or shall we call it sentimental brutalism. While gynocentrism doesn't take the direct approach in attacking men, the effects are nonetheless destructive. A great example is the woman grieving about her womanhood in our current society due to the prevalence of feminism. Instead of calling out the ills of feminism by making the case for female accountability, the gynocentric woman's attitude, unilaterally, is thus: women used to be worshipped and pedestalized. Men did everything for us. Now we don't live in that world. How sad. In what twisted version of mental activity does this register as pro-male in any sense? What man of esteem and self-respect treats this as praise or a sound evaluation of how things should be? This is a microcosmic example of the regard gynocentric women have for the male of the species, a general dehumanization, a regard of men as beasts of burden in an idyllic world in which the female is the master race. No amount of racialist totalitarian dictatorship has equaled the support this sentiment gets that a woman just says in broad daylight. It is not in male nature to succumb or concede to this and fulfill that expected role just because. This can only happen with a culturally induced breaking of the male spirit. We are here to uphold that male spirit and protect it from breaking, or rather, help men help themselves to keep it from breaking. At least, that is my ideal, and that's how things should be. As such, this is the call to place anti-gynocentrism at the forefront of what we do in this movement, well above mere anti-feminism. The latter has its place in a punctuated way, but we will do well to start saying the word gynocentrism and identifying it as the source of the problems we are addressing, especially considering that too many resort to gynocentrism to fight feminism. That clearly has to end.